Hey everybody, welcome into the Week 15 NFL preview podcast for PFI Pro Football Ireland. Mark Hogan is just about in the frame there. Jason Hayes joins us as well. We are presented by our friends over at SBK. More on them in a wee second. We've got an announcement of who won an NFL jersey last week and also a cool announcement this week, which nobody else bar me knows on the podcast. While I get that podcast set up, Mark, you're very welcome. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Locked in, Michael, so I am. Although you're
You're not locked in that you're eating on a podcast.
Podcast. Otherwise, I'm locked in. I mean, the Cardinals are eliminated. My fantasy is done for a year. I feel like that's going to come up at some point today. And I was looking at the playoff clinching scenarios earlier on. So my blinkers are on. I don't know about you boys. But here, Jason, speaking about locked in, Christmas is coming up. Christmas shopping, is it done or is it another 2 weeks until you got to get that done?
That's typically the way it goes. To be fair, now this is the first year my family and I have agreed that we're going to do a Secret Santa. So it takes a lot of the pressure off. I won't reveal who I got in case they're listening. I highly doubt it, but I won't say it anyway. So that was one present I have to get instead of scrambling around for 6 or 7. So, I didn't mean it. I didn't mean it. I don't know why my brain keeps going to that. Like, it's weekly.
Are you going to start wishing people a skibbity new year next, or what's the plan?
Let's move on. How did you get on with Connell last week?
Good crack. It was nice to have a little Kerry man on the podcast, and thank you for that mention because we are going. Well, I'm going to Kerry next month. Myself and Neil Reynolds are going to the Moy and County Tyrone. Galway. Galway's going to sell out, by the way. Galway is like fair play to Galway, class. And then Kerry next month as well. So do check that out. The link is in the bio. linktr.ee/PF Ireland. I did mention at the start of the podcast we're presented by SBK, sportsbook only, no roulette, no casino. Check out the link in the bio. I've got a special bet this week, but before we do that, Gary McGurk won the jersey last week. So congrats to Gary McGurk for winning a jersey of your choice. A replica jersey, Gary. Don't go after like a classic jersey or something that's signed or anything like that there. But big thanks to SBK for that.
Could you not at least sign it, Michael?
We'll talk about that off air. Congrats to Gary, and I had I actually went after this week, so I went after a double this week. Haven't even told Mark or Jason about this, but we've went with the over. Stop eating, Mark. I'm joking. We went with the over in the Bills Pats game and the over in the Lions Rams game, priced at 5-2 enhanced this week. I like it. I like points. I expect points, and if you follow my picks,
the games again.
Bills at Pats over 45.5, and the Lions at the Rams over 50.5.
Oh wow! They are
5-2. They are good. The link will be in the bio of this podcast. If you're watching live, check out our socials over the next few days. That's as good as we can get. I know last week's special was for Charlie Smith to hit 2 field goals. I don't have his leg. He has to kick it. It's not on me. But big thanks to SBK. We appreciate it. Look, it makes a big difference. A big few weeks coming up. Mark, we are 60 days away at the day of recording from the Super Bowl. Are you going or what's the crack?
64 to my wedding then, which is a bit of a scarier thought. No, really looking forward to that. No, hey, there's so much coming up though. And it's funny, we're not touching the Colts, and maybe any of you are talking to the Colts, but it's like here we are 1 month ago saying this whole thing looks locked up and something crazy like Daniel Jones, and can we say Daniel Jones being lost? What something crazy is that Phillip Rivers is suddenly back with an AFC competing team. It's like for a season that we're saying is the wildest season we've ever seen in the NFL. It's taking the piss at this point.
I, Jason, truly think the whole Phillip Rivers thing is taking the piss. I watched Riley Leonard in the national championship last year. I know what he can do. I don't get it. I'm sorry. Maybe I should just shut up at this point, Jason. I get it. It's a cool story, but they're playing the Seattle Seahawks this weekend. No?
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to start, but I mean, he's on the podium today. So, I mean, that's clearly they aren't taking their time and wheeling him out there. Riley Leonard showed up with a banged up knee, I think, on Monday. So that might have factored into decision making. I'm going to talk about it a bit in a while as part of that segment when we're talking about a few teams. But yeah, it's like, what did I say last week I was on? I love the old guys. I loved Stafford at 37. So Rivers back at 44. Yeah, I'm fully behind it.
Mark, where are we going to this week, glad to kick off the podcast with?
Oh God, I don't know where you want to kick it off. As we get into this stretch, though, we are going to try and mention as many of the playoff teams as possible. Someone did try to sneak a non-playoff bound team into this podcast. I don't know if we're going to do in part 1 or part 2, but Jason, that was outrageous. We'll get to that when it comes to it. And if you try and sneak it in, forget about it. Colin will be on next week again.
I had a whole team, like Bidwell was going to be Scrooge. Like there was Ghost of Christmas Past going to come. It was all worked out.
Jeez, I've not prepped in comparison to this, so go for it. But by the way, for people listening to the podcast, I am dosed, and I know I'm a bit of a dose anyway, but I am dosed this week. So if you don't hear me as much this week, just enjoy Hogan's Kildare accent and Hayes' quarterback.
Look, you're after mentioning the 2 games there, the Pats, Bills, and the Lions versus the Rams. I suppose it makes sense to start potentially on that Rams game then. One, if you want me to kick it off, I suppose, I don't know how often, I should really pull up the list, but how often we've been talking about the Rams. And I was kind of thinking, like, in an NFL that has had so much inconsistency around, so many surprises a la Phillip Rivers, I just wonder, is it just an afterthought to look at the Rams because it is so straightforward that they are absolutely torching teams. We've already kind of heard the story of Matthew Stafford, and please no one have a whole preview set up of Matthew Stafford facing his former teams, the Detroit Lions. That is so jaded at this point. But like, it's just so automatic that they're getting in and they're going to look incredible doing so. But it's like when we're talking so recently about Devontae Adams has become absolute nails in the red zone. You don't need the red zone when you have the game that Puka Nacua is coming off. Touchdowns of 28 and 31 yards. 167 yards and 7 catches is insane and was good enough to win him the player of the week. But it's the how that he actually did it that is more outrageous. 5 of those are contested catches, including the one-hander. If you haven't seen that highlight, I don't know how you've missed it. But like, how he was showing up, it shows that Matthew Stafford, as capable as he is, just needs to toss the ball around. And there's nothing to it. It's like, it's hard to talk poorly about the LA Rams right now. They showed up in London, whatever, at the end of October, and we said that was without Puka Nacua. From there on, they've just been absolute lights out. So it's hard to preview a game because they're just that good. I mean, when you look at Puka Nacua, he's just set the PFF record for the best single game by a wide receiver, a record that was set 8 years ago by Julio Jones, has stood that long. I don't know, when you look at the Detroit Lions this week, how they're going to defend against it. And that is a preview that I could go with every single week from now to the Super Bowl, because I think they're going to be that relevant. But there was one stat that stands out to me. The Rams have the most, tied most with the Bills, passes of 20 yards or more in the NFL. Who was the second worst? The Detroit Lions, obviously a banged up secondary there. I think it's actually a complete mismatch for something that a year ago, you know, the Lions would be amazing. And it's like, I cannot believe, and, you know, and looking at the 8-5 Lions, who are obviously on the playoff bubble right now, it's like, I just cannot see anything coming close in the NFL to the LA Rams right now.
I think I'd echo that as well. From obviously the guys who get the most headlines are the guys who put points on the board, like Stafford and Adams and Puka. But when you look at the defense, I mean, maybe not the same. Like, you don't instantly go to 2 or 3 guys that are star names. It's just a collective unit that is also dominating week in, week out. They're just so stingy to play against. Over the last few weeks, even on recent form, they've shut the Seahawks down, the Bucks. Good offenses there. Panthers were the one team that got to them with that upset victory a couple of weeks ago. But then again, against the Cardinals last week, they just reassert that dominance in one of the easiest wins you're ever going to see in the NFL. They're obviously, if you want to look at some stats, I'll sum it up and just say they're very good. They're third in the league in DVOA. And that is both against the run. I think they're top 3 and against the pass. Couple guys who are really standing out this year. Byron Young, playing amazing football. He's 11 sacks on the year. Jared Verse, of course, second-year guy. He's 6 sacks, and he's constantly putting quarterbacks under duress. Got some DBs like Kobe Durant and Emmanuel Forbes forcing turnovers, 3 interceptions each they have. And overall, it's just a stifling defense that Chris Shula, defensive coordinator, is just doing a fantastic job with. In terms of how it matches up to the Lions, I don't think it's as big a mismatch as on the other side of the ball, Mark, which, I do love that Rams offense against the Detroit defense. But still, when I look at it, I think I'm giving an edge to the Rams defense over the Lions offense this week. Like, Lions do have the highest scoring offense in the league. But I said it a couple of weeks ago before the Philly game. They have kind of shrunk a bit when they're facing some of these big teams on offense. They've failed against the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Bucks. They've lost to the Packers twice now. And it just really feels like when they are in these big matchups, they shrink a bit. It's all well and good putting 40, 50 points on the board against the Cowboys or Bengals or whoever they've, managed to do that against. But really, I just want to see them do it against one of the best teams in the league. And they have an opportunity to do that against the Rams. Jahmyr Gibbs is kind of a guy who, when he goes, the Lions offense goes. And those losses that I just mentioned, 2.1 yards per carry against Green Bay, 3.8 against the Chiefs, 2.8 against the Vikings, 3.3 against Philly, and 3.4 against the Packers. It's when the Lions offense is cruising and they are dominating games, that's when we see him scampering for 20, 30 yards almost every time he touches the ball. But when they can't get him going, that's when we really see this offense stall. And unfortunately for the Lions, the Rams are one of the best teams in the league at slowing down off opposing running backs. And the limited success that opposition running backs have had against them has come from certain kind of bigger guys, bigger stature guys. Like Derrick Henry has the most yards against them all year. Probably not going to see that from Gibbs. Maybe they will rely more on Montgomery this week. Wouldn't be surprised to see that. But I fancy this Rams team to shut down the Lions' run game, and it's going to fall on Goff. So it's not just the Stafford revenge game; it's the Goff revenge game against the Rams as well. And what can those guys scheme up? It's a tough challenge, especially if Stafford's putting up touchdowns on every other drive on the other side. They're really going to have to play out of their skin in this one. And the one thing they have going for them is kind of what Mark alluded to. Like, the Rams are just cruising right now, and this doesn't feel like a must-win game for them. But the Lions are sitting outside the playoffs right now. They've got some very good teams ahead of them. They just desperation needs to get them the victory this week.
And I think if you look at the bigger picture in terms of Mark starting the podcast saying in regards to like talking about different teams, and obviously we try and mention as many teams as we can in this podcast. The Detroit Lions play the Rams this week, but they face the Steelers next week, albeit at home. So Steelers getting back into it a little bit in the AFC North. Obviously, a big win against the Ravens last week. They play Monday Night Football against the Dolphins this week coming up. There's about 4 teams mentioned there, boys. Before we talk about the defense for the Lions, I think outside of this game, you're talking about the Rams, lads. You start to ask yourself exactly how this picture is going to play out for them. And you mentioned different guys there, like Matthew Stafford, like Puka, and like Devontae Adams, for example. They have got the Lions this week at home, of course. Outside of the Seahawks game in Week 16, over the Christmas New Year period, they finished the season against the Falcons, and no harm to the crack, the Cardinals. So certainly in terms of the situation that they're in terms of maybe potentially getting to start to rest players, maybe getting that bye week in terms of the playoffs, there is an awful lot on the table for this Rams team, who will really feel that they're going to maybe take a step up on how they got on last year in the playoffs. The really intriguing part for me this week, looking at the Lions defense, was actually looking at a stat. Mark had a really good stat there in regards to the Rams and the situation that they're in, and how the Lions are going to go at them this week. The Lions PR team have got, in terms of all the linebackers in the entire NFL, the Lions linebackers combined to rank the following: first in run stops in the league, first in sacks in the league, third in total pressures. But this week, in terms of percentage of targets allowed, as we've said, to every position by each opposing defense, the Lions are in the top 4 in target share to opposing wide receivers. And of course, they have Puka and Devontae Adams going up against this week in SoFi. That being said, flip it on its head. Last week was the first time since 2007 they had a game with 5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 interceptions. So it probably shows you that stats are complete bull, and it just matters what happens on the field. And we're just talking like all this PFF stuff and all this other stuff. It really actually just matters who has the ball and what they actually do with the ball on both sides of the ball whenever they actually have the ball. So ball mentioned 3 times there. I think one of the biggest things to talk about this defense is, yes, look, at the end of the day, the Rams are going to put up points. We know how good Matthew Stafford is. We know how good not just his WR1, WR2, but we know how good his tight end set is and how good his run game is. Blake Corum last week having a monster game for the Rams. Really interesting to see how he's going to slot in terms of being RB1, RB2. Will he come in that second, third down situation, and how will that Lions defense stop him? Really interesting for me this week in terms of looking at Brian Branch. We know how much of a loss he is going to be on the defense for the Lions. With that win for the Lions last week against the Cowboys, obviously a massive, massive blow for this team out for the rest of the season. I guess in one sense, he has a torn Achilles, but in one sense, it's not just about how good of a player he is, but how much of an impact player he is on this defense. He's so versatile. He can go into different positions when needed and make different plays when needed. It's going to be interesting to see how you look at, they had that combination of Branch, Anzalone, and Barnes and their ability to cover. Who is going to step up? And I think that's one of the biggest conversations that's going to come into this game this week. And not just this game this week, but certainly across the next few weeks going into the postseason as well. If the Lions are in that little discussion, for me, they have to win this week. They have to win next week. If Muhammad can continue to play like he did, and if Hutchinson can create pressure, I think you limit the Rams to about 25 to 32 points at home this week. But that still requires a monster effort from a Lions passing game and a Lions run game. Unfortunately, and a bit like the Kansas City Chiefs, I think we're coming to the end of the season for the Detroit Lions. I think they've maybe lost one too many games this year, and I think this is the week this week where we start to maybe evaluate their postseason situation and think to ourselves, it might not happen this year.
Yeah, and it's a funny one to, sum it up on, because as the Chiefs potentially get proper eliminated this week, I do think that the Detroit Lions have kind of gotten away there, because everyone was kind of more obsessed with the Chicago Bears being top of the NFC North for a minute, that it's kind of slipped. And that's what I was alluding to at the start of the podcast. Like, there's been so many fun branches to go at that the Detroit Lions could seriously miss the NFL or the playoffs, as we read out Luke Walsh saying, home stretch, 4 games to go. And Jer had said it there in the previous comment that you doubt they survive another loss. And you're wording there, Michael, of the Steelers are back in the mix. And they're not back in the mix. They always were there. It's just we didn't.
But there's a feeling, I guess, is maybe the way of saying it. And they've got the Dolphins Monday night. But, really depending on what happens for the Steelers in terms of the AFC North here as well as this game, if the Lions don't win in SoFi, the Steelers will be looking at that game in 4 field going, Jesus, we have a chance not just to beat the Lions here, but to really upset the league in terms of go. Imagine Rodgers going into a former NFC North rival next week with their season on the line, and you're damn right. I mean, I would just jump on this and say, if anybody has a chance to listen to the new episode of New Heights this week, do, because Travis Kelce sounds exhausted. This is the week where they are probably done. It's the week where it says in the graphic here as well, it's crucial. There's going to be a lot of playoff permutations really heating up this week, so it's definitely going to be interesting this week.
Just one final quick point on the Rams. For as good as they've been on offense and defense, quick mention to special teams. They have had some kicker trouble this season. They've got a new guy in now, Josh McCarthy. He's been solid since he came in a couple of weeks ago, but the Rams have two of the Rams' 3 losses were to the Eagles and the Niners. And they essentially lost 2 of those games because of blocked field goal kicks. So when you have these big matchups, just want to stress the importance of putting 3 points on the board when you get those opportunities.
And that's where McVay was just not kicking for so many portions of the year. He was just really super aggressive on 4th down and unlocked a part of the offense, being like, actually, no, we are nails right now. We can convert as many of these as we want.
Let's see what happens this week. Everybody give me, in terms of the Lions, everyone give me some NFC North good karma. As Paddy says, the Lions are done. Give me some good karma. I want to go to the Packers in like 3 weeks. But they haven't announced the game time yet. So if they could announce the game time, that would be great. Please.
Oh no, what do we do? One of our friends here, Justin Turner, was listening the whole
Lions
time.
fan.
Detroit Lions on. Oh no. Have to
We'll
reacquaint
see.
themselves with Matthew Stafford, the Lions D. That is from. Thank you for tuning in, Justin. Probably a bad time to listen into the Pro Football Ireland podcast live.
Before we move on to our next topic, the NFL announced this week that they're coming back to Munich in 2026, 2028. And then it looks as if Berlin, I believe there actually is an agreement with the city of Berlin, but it looks as if there's an agreement in 2027 and 2029. Everyone can imagine that my phone blew up today asking me why hasn't Dublin been announced yet. We don't know anything. So whenever we know something, we will let you know.
It was actually funny following along with the Instagram. We put up a post and I was like, why is this performing so well? And I was like, no, it's because people are getting excited about Dublin could be announced next week or something. If that were to happen again, no intel there. It's like, I don't know. Isn't it kind of funny though, that in the middle of December, they're after announcing that? Like, is this what they're going to do? They're going to start like December is going to be announcement month?
I think for a new market, and this is maybe a discussion for a different point, but I think with a new market, like, look, again, we are independent of the league. We're very grateful to the support from the league, but at the same time, we have to be subjective and talk about this. When we see Paris being talked about on national media outlets, including the owner of the team or the president of the team talking about it for the Saints, I would expect Paris or somewhere to, have a game.
But also, Michael, I think because I have no intel, I'm allowed to dump what I've picked up on social media. I thought it was very interesting that you had Sky Sports broadcasting from a Packers game the other day, and Seamus is on the sideline. Like, why is Seamus on the sideline? Why is there this heavy involvement from seemingly NFL UK and Ireland? And again, I don't understand how this gets set, but it was definitely that has to be interesting, Michael, that there was so much. Yeah, you know too much about it.
I don't know anything, and I'll tell you this: if you want to have the chance to ask Neil Reynolds that, come to the Moy, Galway, or Killarney. Jason, are you going to pop into that Kerry show? No, are you too busy on Saturday? It's what, an hour and 20 from your house?
There's a bit of a feud going on between Cork and Kerry right now in the Munster final of the club football. The Bears, my local team, got robbed.
That's your local team?
Yeah.
Oh no! Oh no!
Do you see the decision?
Oh yeah, prime time on RT the other day. My God, I didn't know that was your local team.
Jesus. Right, what's next before we take a break?
There was a couple of mentions I see of the Chiefs there, and we've kind of talked about a couple of teams. So maybe in part 2 we'll wrap back around and we'll talk about the Packers and Broncos game, and then kind of another segment that we're doing. And maybe we'll do this kind of quick fire, because as we get to this part of the year, we're trying to get as many games as we can in without doing a 2.5 hour long podcast.
I guess just saying that as well, Mark, just for 10 seconds while we have that opportunity, because I know people are probably on the first part. They might, for some reason, go back to the second part at some point. We're live in week 16. And then it's pre-recorded 17 and 18, but there will be a podcast for each week. So if you want to eat turkey and listen to Mark Hogan talk, he's your man. Hogan's on week 17, Jason's on week 18. We're live in the first week of wildcard. That's the plan.
That's the plan. Plans can change.
Hold on.
I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you what it is. This is live. The reason I was eating was I was actually out all day. I had a dental emergency that is after popping up from nowhere. So I was at the dentist today, dropped a lot of money that I did not anticipate with Christmas coming up, with the Super Bowl coming up, with a wedding coming up. I had to drop that money, and they said they couldn't get it done in one day. So now I'm on an emergency list before Christmas, which could be the Monday that we are supposed to be recording. So I didn't get a chance to say
chomping away on Pringles with a dental emergency.
That was a piece of garlic bread, by the way. I hadn't been able to.
Well, worst comes to worst, we've got Mr. Hayes here, who I don't know if he wants to go to the Super Bowl. I don't know. This is just public threats right now. We will have a podcast that week.
Michael, yes. I was actually thinking of that live recording that pre-recording that we have planned the Monday before Christmas, because you actually had to push it. You had to kind of put your routine around it because you're getting a haircut. I have to say, you have a fresh haircut. You turn to the side during that. Like, are you one of these like every 2 weeks kind of guy?
I'm getting, actually, somebody else said this to me the other day. I am getting a bit of talk about this at the minute. Yes, is the answer.
He's a celebrity now. He doesn't know when Pat McAfee's going to fly him over. So
what I will say is, yes, the plan is we're going to record a podcast both Mondays. We're conscious of the week 17 is Christmas, and there's games on the Wednesday or Thursday, but we also want to make it accessible So TBC on that. Hogan won't get to the Super Bowl if he's not in that podcast in week 17. Let's move on. What team do you want to talk about, Mark?
Well, I can go if you want, but I feel like I've been hugging the microphone for a minute. Jason, the Colts and the Seahawks. We were talking about
Jason,
the Colts for a second. I presume you want to talk about them.
Yeah, I think, look, the obvious big news that came out over these last couple of days is the Philip Rivers news, and of course the Daniel Jones unfortunate injury. The Colts were obviously on a bit of a skid before that injury, and that game wasn't exactly going good before his Achilles went. They've lost 3 in a row now since the Germany bye week, so all those good vibes after beating the Falcons have long gone. But it is frustrating now that it feels like they mightn't be given a fair shake to kind of rectify that skid. Javarius Ward, quarterback, but he's got an IR as well today, just announced. But Philip Rivers, of course, is in to save the day. And as I mentioned at the beginning, on Monday, so it wasn't just the Jones injury. Riley Leonard showed up with a banged up knee, and by Monday morning, Steichen had already reached out to Philip Rivers at this point. I should say, this isn't I don't have like a hotline to Philip Rivers. This is coming from Stephen Holder and Jeremy Fowler, who put out a great article on it today. But just for the PFI listeners, Steichen and Philip Rivers are already frequently in touch. They worked together in San Diego back in 2019 when Rivers was the quarterback there, and Steichen was kind of beginning his coaching career. And after going their separate ways, they've been talking weekly, apparently. So a lot of what Shane Steichen's coaching philosophy is centered around his early days working with Philip Rivers. And take this moment to mention the fact that Steichen is 40 years old. Philip Rivers is 44. So don't go looking at it as if Steichen is Rivers' mentor. Probably the opposite, if anything. Philip Rivers is a granddad, like a 44-year-old granddad. But look, he knows the offense, he knows the system because of that history. He, of course, hasn't played in 5 years now. So a lot of questions. And if you want to laugh, look up his press conference from Wednesday today of this week, because he certainly hasn't lost his sense of humor. But look, he knows the offense. That internally they worked him out, and they say he's ready physically. He still has a solid arm, and apparently, like I mentioned, they speak weekly. Steichen kind of floated this concept to Rivers a couple of months ago. Just kind of a hypothetical scenario, if this certain situation happens, would you be interested in it? So I do get the sense that Rivers has been working in the background. I don't think this is just straight off his couch type situation. And he does have some kids in high school for football, so I'm sure he's out training with them quite frequently. A lot of my memory of Rivers was how he finished in San Diego, and he did have like a very poor season when he finished with them, but I almost forgot how solid he was in his final season, which was with the Colts, when Josh Allen knocked that team out of the playoffs. Rivers actually had a very solid year that year. Of course, his arm wasn't what it used to be, but in terms of his fit for this offense, they've got Jonathan Taylor. We know what the identity is. They're going to run first. If Rivers can just use his mind, not make any crazy throws, but just some nice, quick, simple passes, keep the ball moving, and just hope that the rest of the team does enough. I think that's really their only play. Like this team is in win out mode. We saw the trade they had for Gardner, Sauce Gardner earlier in the year, and mortgaging their future on the now. So they're not going to just settle for the fact that Jones is injured. They're making a move and they're trying to do something about it. And look, it's going to be fun to watch it at the minimum. Seahawks is not the team you want to go against for this comeback if he does play. Not least for the fact that Seattle is one of the most ferocious pass rushes in the league. So Philip Rivers, never a mobile guy, but how is that body going to respond to those first few hits? Should be interesting to see. Look, I won't go too far into the Seahawks. I'll let you. I'm keen to hear your guys' thoughts on the whole Rivers situation.
I'm actually going to bypass my whole discussion about the New England Patriots and actually respond to this properly. The Patriots probably win the Super Bowl. They need to do better in terms of their run defense, their loss and success rate entering week 14.
Hold on,
They need to do better on that.
let's get to that. It makes gives your thing.
Hold on. No, I want to have a proper discussion about this. That's all I have. By the way, there was a full-on discussion about that. But, points to improve, really impressive variable, yada, yada, yada. Patriots, well done, Super Bowl. As somebody that works in education, I think the whole Rivers thing is just first off, you almost forget about Sauce Gardner. If you had said, I had the opportunity to meet Shane Steichen in August, lovely guy. If you had said to a Colts fan in August that they would have Sauce Gardner and Philip Rivers would be the starting quarterback after Jones has a stormer of a season, they would have thought you were high on something. So let's just start that and say no more. But Philip Rivers, who's
saying Daniel Jones had a stormer of a season though?
That's
where the argument, huh?
He had a great season.
No, I don't think I agree that Daniel Jones.
All right, well, hold on. I have a good point here.
That's the conversation in terms of when you talk about Philip Rivers specifically. I don't think, don't get me wrong, I think it's crazy that's happening. But what Jason is saying there, he doesn't have to be this super mobile quarterback because that's not what the offense is about. So it's almost like a Kyle Shanahan offense that it was almost like plug and play with a lot of quarterbacks there for a number of years. Theoretically, this offense should be plug and play because it is all about how it's been schemed up. And I don't think that the success and failure of it lies on Philip Rivers' shoulders necessarily. It's that was Shane Steichen being caught up to all along, because Daniel Jones, we could see his quote unquote performance is what was starting to drop there. But I don't know if it was necessarily him. It was that the whole offense was regressing because teams knew how to defend it, and that was completely sell out and defend the run and then see what they had in the passing. So it's like Daniel Jones being lost. You haven't lost a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. It's like you just need someone that's serviceable back there.
Okay. I'm happy for Jason to respond to that, and then I can have the crack. So
no, I think it's cool that we're seeing this because we have seen a few things like this hinted in the past. Brett Favre coming back 5 hours after retirement. I know when Arizona made the playoffs and had a few injuries, Kurt Warner was expecting a phone call. So it's cool to see one of these actually happen. It remains to be seen whether he'll see the field. I mean, it certainly looks that way if he's doing press conferences. But as I say, it's a tough first game to go into with the Seahawks.
I think maybe ask Conal Diggin or Derek Carger what they think of Riley Leonard, and then maybe start Philip Rivers in fantasy this week and see what you think in regards to that. Look, we're in a bit of an interesting situation here in comparison to what we have of American sports, in that in a lot of our schools we have got teachers who are GA players, rugby players, mostly working in GA because they're amateur sports people. Like David Clifford, for example, is a PE teacher in Kerry. I just look at the situation that Philip Rivers has had over the last 4 to 5 years working in St. Michael's Catholic School in Alabama, and just imagine you leave the NFL and you suddenly immerse yourself into the high school environment and the players that used to be in your locker room, and then the young kids and the young athletes that you now have. And to just imagine that in towards the end of the high school season, that your PE teacher or coach is leaving to go back to the NFL and will probably be back in the canteen by the 3rd week in January, 2nd week in January, tops. Sorry, Colts fans, hopefully not. It's just incredible. I think that whole thing is just outrageous. But then I done a lot more digging into it, done a bit of Conal digging, and it's a private school. It's a highly funded school in Alabama. He'll be grand. The kids will be grand. I just think the whole thing is outrageous. I could probably spend 2 or 3 hours talking about it, to be honest.
I do wonder how much of an objective decision this is. I don't think any team in the league is calling up Philip Rivers for obvious reasons, but the fact that him and Steichen are so close, apparently Steichen gave Rivers a phone call before telling anyone officially in the organization that he was thinking about offering him a role on the team. So how much of it is objective and how much of it is being clouded by the fact that they're buddies. But then again, there's the benefit of that too, that Rivers obviously has so much knowledge about the Steichen offense already. So you can look at it any number of ways. We're only going to see the outcome when it actually happens.
But that outcome normally comes in training camp when is it like a 40-plus-year-old like Jason Peters or someone says, I'm going to come out for one more year. They do a week of training camp. They're like, nah, not able for it. And I feel like Philip Rivers would be the same when it's actually like, no, go like hit the gym. Father Time is caught up with Travis Kelce, we'll talk about in a second. I think when you're going in cold like Philip Rivers is doing, it's like a fella playing junior and being called up to a county team, a junior club team, and having to go play in All Ireland for like it's such massive stakes that coming in off the bench the way that he is just outrageous. I did love the tweet that almost got 100,000 likes on Twitter saying that Tom Brady's helmet must be like a Green Goblin mask in his wardrobe right now, because does he feel overlooked or what? That Philip Rivers of all is the one that got the shout out. The likes of
Tom Brady's 48 now, so I mean this guy's 4 years younger. He's a young buck compared to Brady.
I just think you just ask yourself what's next this season. What's next? Bring it on.
Do you know, of all the players that could have come back. Sorry, I'm just checking. Yeah, Aaron Rodgers obviously 42. The Andrew Luck of it all. Like Andrew Luck is the guy that retired young, and it's like of all the former Colts quarterbacks.
Yeah, but have you watched like, college football this year? Andrew Luck was in game day one day during the season, Stanford, and there was an unidentified, undisclosed $50 million donation to that. There's a whole lot of conversations about that going on, and then as well, I don't want to get too deep down nerdy in this. Are you going to go with the Chiefs? Because this first part's going 40 minutes long. Go for it.
Yeah, do you know, it was about the Chiefs, and we saw that question. You can pull it up there from Jer asking how they got to this 6-7. How did you do the motion? If you're talking about are they done in the playoffs yet, I suppose we have to start there to do the math. If you say one is gone from the AFC North, 2 from the South, 2 from the East, then it's 2 from the West. So the Broncos have absolutely locked down one of them. They can confirm that this weekend. But then the last one will come down to the Chiefs or the Chargers. So when this is the game you're talking about this weekend, the Chiefs sit at a 12% chance of making the playoffs. If you look at the athletic thing, it goes down to under 1% if they lose to the Chargers. It all really hinges on this game. Looking forward, they both do play the Broncos, and then you could say that the Chiefs have an easier schedule going forward. They play the Titans and Raiders, where the Chargers play the Cowboys and Texans. But I don't want to make this about schedule necessarily. You kind of have to look and say, well, do I see them win the game? Like, what have they shown us all year that they can win one? It's like, I don't think they're necessarily a bad team at all. If you compare them to the Broncos there, the Chiefs are 1-7 in one-score games, whereas they were 11-0 last year. The Broncos are 8-2 this year in one-score games, whereas they were 1-6 last year. Their points differential are almost the same, 63 versus 73. So it's like, it's not that they're a bad team, but I have to think that the Chiefs this year, it's like playing them is almost like what Ireland do in the Irish soccer team. When they go out and play against an Armenia, they don't play well because they just completely take them for granted. But when you put Portugal on their schedule, the Irish team come up and play. I think that's every NFL team this year is Ireland facing Portugal. They want to beat the Chiefs because they're just so aware that that's a game that they're supposed to lose, but it means so much to morale and everything when you go and beat them. When you go and look, I've been as guilty as anyone for standing over excuses. The lack of receiver has caught up to them clearly. Like game of the line there the other day, they go to Travis Kelce twice and he's not able to come up with the ball. Kelce, obviously a player that was supposed to retire in the offseason, or flirted with it. It wasn't up to us to second guess Andy Reid, but should Andy Reid have not been more concerned with, we've always said this, but they've always gotten away with it. When you come to this game, though, it's like everything points to me again picking the Chiefs because that's the easy thing to do. Justin Herbert, his toughness is absolutely insane right now. We saw what he did against Philadelphia the other day, like able to win that game when 2/3 of his dropbacks were not ever passed. He had 7 sacks and 8 scrambles because that offensive line is absolutely horrendous. He's obviously just coming off the surgery, but everything points towards the Chiefs winning. But everything is pointed towards the Chiefs winning all year, and they haven't been able to pull it out of the bag. I do think that they can get over the line this year, but you just can't see this team as a threat. I don't think the Chargers are a threat. I think the Chargers are what's the phrase, dead men walking or whatever. I think the Chargers have serious problems as well, but it's like unfortunately the Chiefs are going to miss out mathematically. Like,
yeah, that game Monday night was poor, to say the least. That was a gift that nobody wants around the festive season, and I'll be the bigger man to say it. The thought of going to a Super Bowl this year without the Chiefs is really good. I'm sorry, Chiefs fans, but I can't do it anymore. I can't sit for 5 days and pretend to care anymore. I'm sorry. I can't. It's time. I'm happy. And yeah.
And I can't imagine it's going to be the Packers, or sorry, the Eagles either. So, I mean, it's exciting. And look, it's exciting for us personally, but it's like you can tell like people were getting jaded of it. So it's like, look at everyone's super excited. I don't think we're talking about this week. I don't think.
About the who? Sorry,
no. I don't think we're talking about. Sorry, I don't think we're talking about the Eagles this week. But it's like, yeah, I mean, that's a conversation itself.
It is. They have a very easy game at home on Sunday. They should win that very well and shut all of us up. Let's jump around next and go Packers Broncos on the other side and talk about a festive gift. Before we jump off this part, just to let people know that there is no college podcast this week because the only game this weekend is Army Navy, but there was a mini podcast with myself and Conor reacting to the College Football National Championship, which was, we're 40 minutes in, we might get away with it. Was it rigged? Maybe. Does Connell agree? I think it's rigged, but don't tell anybody. We'll talk to you on the other side. Look at me getting away on the thumb with the Patriots. Brilliant. 3, 2, 1. It is part 2 of our Week 15 NFL podcast presented by SBK Pro Football Ireland. A big weekend, Week 15 of the NFL season. The college football playoff starts next week. A lot more content not coming up. Obviously, SBK, check out their big enhanced offer, 5-2 for the over in both the Rams game and in the Patriots Bills game as well. Check out the link in the bio for that. Obviously, only sportsbook, no roulette, no casino. Makes a big, big difference to us. With Mark Hogan, with Jason Hez, we are live. If you're in your car this weekend, I'm Dosed, and you're very, very welcome to the podcast. We really, really appreciate you taking the time to listen to us. Ireland's most listened to NFL podcast, going by the stats over the last 5 weeks. We really, really appreciate it. Mark, almost there, almost Christmas. Are you excited for our pre-records Christmas week?
Yeah, no, I'm excited. You know, this time of year now, it's what did I see the other day that seeing Josh Allen playing football in the snow, you know, football means something. So we're definitely there right now, and got to enjoy it while it lasts because most of these teams, or a majority of these teams, are going to be gone in a matter of weeks. So enjoy them all while you have them.
Sean Quinn, who's watching live, says, well, lads, thank you, Sean. Thank you to everybody for watching live. And again, a big welcome to everybody listening back. We really do appreciate the support. Jason, we're a few days away from Christmas now. We're, at the time of recording, about 14 days away from Christmas season. We're going to do a very quick segment here before we look ahead to a huge game. If we could give a playoff team, I believe Mark may have insinuated this after I said it, a playoff team a gift this festive season, who would it be and what would it be and why, sir? Go for it.
Yeah, so as I said, I had an idea for this one, but I got shut down behind the scenes. I've been suppressed, but that's okay because I've pivoted. So
full disclosure, Jason wanted the Cardinals podcast, and we said, you know what, Week 15 might be 10 weeks too late.
Piss off with that. No harm to the crack.
I had this whole thing. Bidwell, Scrooge. Look, I won't get into it. I'll show you another time. I'll tell you about it in the pub.
Please do.
Hey, did you not just hear we have some pre-records to do? So Christmas week, everybody, we're going to have a Cardinals podcast. It's going to make it happen.
No, it won't, because Mark is on that one and Jason isn't. So the one after Christmas, we'll have dental approval. We'll see what happens. Right, Jason, go for it, sir. Go for it.
Yeah, okay. Bear with me on this one, but we're entering December football now. We have entered December football. It's 10th of December. And the NFC playoff picture just looks incredible right now. I love it. We've got the Rams up top, and they're playing the Lions this week, and there's only 2 games separating them, which is bizarre. But let's just play through a few scenarios and bear with me. I'll get to my gifts. So let's assume the Eagles are taking the East. So we then are left with 8 teams essentially playing for 6 places in the NFC, and I'm including the Panthers in that one. Maybe generously, but they're still there, so we'll count them. So we've got the Bucks, Niners, Rams, Seahawks, Packers, Bears, Lions, and the Panthers. I encourage everyone to look up the remaining schedules for those teams in your own time, because they are all essentially playing each other, it seems, week in, week out. It doesn't fully kick off this week. We've got the Rams, Lions, of course, which we've talked about. But after that, the week after, we've got Bucks, Panthers, Bears, Packers, Rams, Seahawks. Week after that, we have Panthers, Seahawks, Niners, Bears, final week of the season. We've got Niners, Seahawks, Panthers, Bucks, Lions, Bears. Point being, all of these teams essentially have their destiny in their own hands because they're playing each other week in, week out. And there's going to be some fantastic matchups there that we can talk about when we get to them over the coming weeks. But in terms of what the gift is, as excited as I am to watch those games, there are, of course, external games that will also have a big impact on the NFC playoff race. And there's 3 teams to look out for in particular that have the most say over this NFC playoff picture. The Falcons still have to play the Bucks and the Rams. The Colts still have to play the Niners, and they're playing the Seahawks this week. And then you have the Vikings, who still have to play the Lions and the Packers. So my question is, which of those teams is going to send a gift to either the Bears or the Panthers, essentially, because they're the divisions, and guide them to the playoffs? I think the gift in this scenario is going to be the Vikings. They are playing the Lions and the Packers over the next couple of weeks. And if the Vikings can upset one of those teams, then it's going to massively help the Bears on the way to the playoffs. So I think the Bears are going to be looking for a gift from the Vikings. That was a very long-winded way of saying that point, but did that make any sense? I mentioned a lot of teams there.
Yeah, no, I think it makes perfect sense, and you've put me to shame because mine's really simple, to be honest. I've picked the Bucks, and I may have screwed my scythe. My scythe? Wow, I may have screwed my. I'm dosed, by the way, but cool. All right, I'm not fully on it this week. I'm trying my best here. All right, the energy's here. I promise. Hopefully, it's coming through on the car radio for people. I thought the Bucks, who are in playoff contention. I want to give a quick shout out to Ryan Donnelly for coming with me to Mayo Bridge last weekend. A big Bucks fan. Imagine how he felt last week when the Saints. Mayo Bridge. Imagine how he felt when the Saints last week didn't decimate, but defeated the Bucks. God help him. The gift that I can give for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers is Mike Evans coming back, and it would take some balls from people this week, some massive cojones this week, to start Mike Evans in his potential return to the NFL. And I am timestamping this, I know, on Thursday Night Football in his return. Because obviously the playoffs are on. I believe we're all in the playoffs in fantasy football. And for Mike Evans, Mark, are you in the playoffs? No?
I have some stats ready to go whenever you want them, so I prepared in case.
You know what? I've actually looked. I've looked at your stats in detail, and I think your brother's the lad that's been shafted over anybody else. He's got the most points for, and he isn't in it. But Jason, you're in the playoffs, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in the playoffs. Yeah, good. I put up points, and I also played some good defense. I know, Mark, you let yourself down on the defensive side of fantasy.
Yeah, that is thank you for pointing out that it's the defensive side of fantasy, because it's like, defense does win championships. But I did look, Jason, you put up 119 points each week. I put up 118. Michael, you scored 109 points per week. So if you wanted the stats, I told you I had them ready to go. Jason, you beat me by an average of 1.4, yet you ended up with 4 more wins than me. I'm not calling you out now. I'm just saying, like, that's the rub of the green that I was getting.
There's 3 people. There's 3 people in 8 and 6 in that league.
And then and then the league has an average conceded score of 109 week to week. I was being put against teams. My average conceded score was 128. It does not matter what league you're playing in. 128. You could be on like different numbers to us, and 128 is wild. We were playing regular format PPR. 128 points per week is wild. So I did come with stats because I have missed out on our fantasy, and I only played one fantasy league this year because I wanted the jeopardy of it all. Never again. I hate that. I hate that fantasy is over for me so early this year.
€50 ahead, baby.
Oh, boom.
€50 ahead.
Christmas. All right. Here, talking. That'll be a gift to a player in our fantasy league. Do you want to keep talking about the Bucks, or do you want me to
I've got loads in the Bucks, but I do have to say something very quickly because there is a bit of breaking news in football. And I have to say this, not just for the podcast, but for the algorithm, Mark, and the fact that we've at least talked about it. You don't need to say anything. I'll say it, and then I'll move on back to the Bucks. Sharon Moore, who is the head coach of Michigan, has been fired. He's been terminated with cause effective immediately. Following a university investigation, credible evidence was found that Coach Moore engaged in an inappropriate relationship with a staff member. Moving on, I have another gift for Bucks fans and College Football Podcast back next week. Sean Tucker. You have Mike Evans. You've got another guy coming back as well. Let's see more of Sean Tucker in this offense going in, because quite frankly, this offense has been absolute dirt in recent weeks. We know that Bucky Irvin's reappearance, and great to see Bucky Irvin back in the NFL. He was baptized last Sunday, went well in the morning, didn't go that well in the afternoon, Bucky, but it really sort of reshapes the distribution that Tucker is getting. But his style and his tempo on a different drive and his pace can allow the Bucks maybe exploit that different 1 and 2 position situation where you bring in one guy, take the other out, and bring another guy in. His efficiency is really, really good, whether it's churning out different extra yards or finding a different option for Baker to check down on certain drives. It's definitely an option for them. But I think the biggest issue is at the minute, Baker really, really needs to find a way to improve in the last few weeks of the season. And by getting Tucker back into the game more effectively and bringing Mike Evans in, it could definitely help. The Bucks' offense is being hindered at the minute by injuries, by play calling. Baker is part of that issue. He needs to throw the ball better. He needs Emeka Ibuka to get the ball whenever he's running into the end zone. Otten on 3rd and 4th downs needs to be better. And I do believe that Mike Evans and Tucker as gifts will certainly be a great gift for them, because coming off a loss to the Saints, they've won 1 in their last 4. Ibuka has not topped 45 yards in that stretch. Baker Mayfield has not topped 200 passing yards in that stretch. It is time for the Bucks to either grow up, put up, or maybe their gifts should just be a sack of coal instead this Christmas. Not a Colin.
Do you know, they did become one-dimensional, and for a few weeks we were like saying, wow, if they aren't becoming one-dimensional with all these injuries, well, then no team should have the excuse. But you're saying there, like, Mike Evans is a huge addition, and it does open up Ibuka again. So I'm excited to see what the Bucks, because they're under pressure now. They need to start playing.
Any other gifts?
I have the Jacksonville Jaguars, a team that is obviously right now destined to the playoffs. I'm after saying there in the last part that in the AFC, I would certainly be giving them a spot based on the 10th of December as we record this. The gift that I would give them is a fear factor, because when you have this team that has had so many top picks in the draft the last few years, they don't have a game record. Travis Hunter was supposed to be it when you got him this year. He obviously is out injured, but he was developing anyway. Trevor Lawrence coming off one of the best games of his career, but we know what his profile is versus production. They don't match up. Travis Etienne in the run game, he's 10th in rushing in the league. 394 of his yards were put up in the first 4 games of September, 200-yard games. Since then, he's not had one 100-yard game. He's averaging 58 yards instead of the 99 that he was doing before that. In the receiving game, you have Brian Thomas, who was the leading receiver, hasn't had a 100-yard game all year. He's had 2 touchdowns. The last was in the middle of October in week 6. That's before they came to London. That's how long ago that is. So they go out and they trade for Jacoby Myers, who's becoming the focal point of the offense. He was targeted 10 times last week. He came down with 4 of those. I mean, I ask you again, which one of them scares you? When you look at the defense, the team and Devin Lloyd specifically had a bunch of interceptions early in the year. That's disappeared. But I suppose the hope for me probably lies with Josh Hines-Allen, a guy that I talked about last week in terms of like he is getting hot as a pass rusher. 6.5 sacks since the start of November. He'd only have sacks before that. The team is moving him about a bit, which is definitely giving him more looks. But I just want to see him become more disruptive. He has now as many sacks as TJ Watt. But what do we see when TJ Watt isn't getting a sack? He's an absolute menace. And, you know, case in point, he leads the leagues in batted balls. Like, he just always wants to be disruptive. That's what Josh Hines-Allen needs to do for me next. I do get that players become those household names in the playoffs and not before that. I mean, it's just the way that it works really when you're in those isolated games. But it does take, for me, Jacksonville having a guy on their team that strikes fear into their opponents, that they have to prep a game plan to take them out. And that's just something I don't see from them right now.
Okay. Thank you, Santa. Duval. Let's talk about the Packers-Broncos game, lads, before we get a headache for this week. Jason, do you want to start us off? Are you going with the Packers or are you going with the Broncos, lad?
Yeah, I'll talk with the Packers offense.
Go Pack,
love
go.
Love the general vibe of the team right now. And like speaking of December football, I really enjoyed that game on Sunday against the Bears. Just icy Lambeau Field. Phoebe Schechter freezing to death in this live on TV. It was
And what we will say, Jason, as well, is if you click the link in our bio, linktr.e/PF Ireland, vote for Daniel Whelan this weekend for the Pro Bowl. I have to say that before I forget, Jason. I agree, it was fantastic. Sorry.
Brilliant. Yeah. Much deserved, by the way. Yeah, look, this team's getting hot at the right time. 4 wins in a row, 3 of them straight in the division. With like massive games here when you're competing against the Lions and the Bears to even make the playoffs, to come out with those 2 wins in successive weeks is just fantastic. I'm loving the swagger the team has. Like Matt LaFleur looks like he's feeling it. Love the quick handshake with Ben Johnson. Going to see in a couple of weeks, he said after the game. Going for it on 4th down a lot. They're being very aggressive in their decisions and they're having a lot of success doing that. A lot of that is because of how confident the players are playing. Like Jordan Love just looked absolutely fearless last week and the last 2 weeks. 4 touchdowns against Detroit and 3 against Chicago. We all know the talent he has and his arm talent and what he can do throwing a football. But the way he led some of his receivers on those deep balls against Chicago, that one to Bo Melton in particular was just a beautiful throw. 47 yards down the field, hitting a guy in stride horizontally. Just love the touch, and he's just letting it loose. And it's the guys around him that are obviously part of that success as well. Like Christian Watson continues to show his full potential. Doesn't get a lot of catches, but every time the ball hits his hand, it's electric. The offensive line is keeping Love clean. Like the amount of time he had against Detroit a couple of weeks ago, and very clean game against Chicago as well. It's testament obviously to what the offensive line is doing in front of him, and it's allowing him to play calm and confident in himself. Josh Jacobs is just steady as a rock. He hasn't actually cracked 100 yards yet this year, just looking at his stats. But he's he just consistently puts 80 yards on the box score and over 4 yards per carry. He's just a very solid running back that's allowing them to do the things that they do in the passing game. Tough matchup, obviously, against the Denver defense, and the Denver, fantastic unit there. And as good as the Packers are at protecting Love, he's only been sacked 18 times on the year. Obviously, that Denver defense is fantastic at getting to the quarterback. They have the most sacks in the league, so that's definitely going to be a key point to watch. I think ultimately, maybe we won't see as many deep shots as we've seen in the last couple of weeks. They're still going to try and create those opportunities for Love, but against that Denver defense, you're going to see a lot more quick passes. Maybe try and exploit some of the aggressiveness that Denver always play with, whether that's hard counts or screens, draw plays, just a few things to just keep them on their back foot and give Love a bit more time. But it's a really tough game to call. I think I'll get your lads' thoughts on it before we make a call on it.
Well, I'm glad, Jason, you're kind of alluding to the fact that the Packers offense can be fun, because for so many weeks it wasn't. And it's something that, I have my doubts about. And again, theme of this podcast, me talking about, like, there's been inconsistencies, and certainly that offense has been one. I remember saying one of the earlier weeks, like, they're playing with their food too much, and hopefully now they snap out of it and they allow themselves to be a bit more expressive, I suppose, and get the ball downfield, which we're seeing a bit more of. But as the offense grows, I've taken note of something from the defense, and I actually had to text our buddy Dara Carragher before I said something stupid here. And I just asked Dara, is he worried about the defense? And he said, no, it's a Super Bowl caliber defense, and if they're bumped from the playoffs, it's not going to be the defense's fault. But what I was looking at is, definitely that first level, the D line, is something to watch for, because it's all very much Micah Parsons. In terms of the pass rush last week, Parsons had 8 quarterback pressures. The rest of the team combined to 10. So what if teams start doubling and tripling Micah Parsons? Is there another guy to step up? Because Rashawn Gary has 7.5 sacks this year, but his pressure rate is way towards the bottom of the league, and he's just a guy that blows hot and cold. So if teams are obviously removing him from the pass game, well, then why not look at the run game as well? Because that's a fantastic way to be able to take Micah Parsons out of it. And it's like the Green Bay Packers, if you just look at the NFL stats, they're 9th in the league at defending the run, but it's a different story since the Panthers ran all over them in week 9. That was only the second time in their 8 games previous to that they've given up 100 yards on the ground. In 5 games since, the Packers have given up 100 yards 4 times. In other words, they had been averaging 89 yards per game, including 163 to the Panthers. That's gone up to 121. So teams have clearly seen a weakness. So I looked specifically at what the Panthers were doing. And it wasn't that it was explosive play after explosive play. Rico Dowdle got the ball a ton. He did have one play of 79 or 29 yards, but he only had 6 plays of over 7 yards. It was definitely a death by 1,000 cuts. And Devontae Wyatt, now he went out on Thanksgiving, the defensive tackle. He's a massive loss. But I think that's what teams have said. They're like, we don't want Micah Parsons being an absolute game wrecker. We can clearly run on this team. And, we all know how important running is this time of year, especially if they're having to go to somewhere with some cold weather. That I think it's a concern that's gone under the radar now that teams, and this is what I'm saying about how you were to play against the Colts was to defend against the run. If you're playing against the Packers, I think right now it's gone under the radar that use the run against them. And probably double or triple team Micah Parsons.
I think that, I watched that Panthers game back a few weeks ago, last week, and the difference in the Green Bay team from then to now is just incredible, and just a really, really fun game as a football fan to watch last week between the Packers and the Bears. It was superb, and it's funny that Dar's saying there he's not concerned.
And he said it with such conviction as well. Like, I'm going to put my neck out now by going completely against the smartest guy that I know talking about NFL.
If you want to hear the man talk about college football as well, Dar's back on next week ahead of the first round of the college football playoff, which starts next Friday night / Saturday morning. In terms of the Broncos offense, to round off this game in terms of who thinks we're actually making some game picks in a minute, because this is a pretty big game. What year is it? The last time the Denver Broncos were in this position this far into the season, the Super Bowl was in Levi Stadium. They win Super Bowl 50 and start off with a guy that played with Peyton Manning, a guy that Peyton Manning handed the ball off to, and CJ Anderson. The Broncos' run game with the combination of RJ Harvey, J.K. Dobbins is really, really one to not just watch, but enjoy watching. Obviously, J.K. Dobbins went down. He has a season-ending foot injury. Harvey, 75 yards on 17 attempts is one stat you can talk about. But the fact he got a touchdown last week against the Raiders in what was effectively a home game in Las Vegas, his energy, his tenacity, and his overall enthusiasm when he has the ball reminds me of that runner that they had in CJ Anderson. And there's a lot that's reminding me of this Super Bowl 50 team. I know we're talking about the offense here, but you think of guys like Von Miller that was out there on the field in Super Bowl 50. Benito has been superb. I know, Mark, we talked about him at length whenever we were looking at that game on Virgin in London. And 1 hour factor before talking about the Broncos offense generally, Brandon McManus has never faced the Broncos since he left. This is the first game he will face against them since this week, which is a crazy stat. You wouldn't think that's the case, but it is. He was actually, I believe, playing the Jaguars when they faced each other in London a couple of years back. Broncos can obviously officially, they can lock their playoff berth in this weekend with a win against the Packers, in terms of they can get their seat up to another level. Obviously, they're in the playoffs. Apologies. Excuse me. I've got brain fog this week. I'm actually wrecked in terms of... is anybody else dosed? No, just me. I'm presuming these two are fine. It stops at the border, yeah?
I haven't heard the phrase dosed either. That's obviously under the weather. Dosed. I have a dose.
That comes to Dublin, all right. That is that must be a Munster. That must be the Munster border that goes across.
You've never heard of the word dose?
I had a bad dose of it, but I wouldn't say I'm dosed.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, forget previewing this game. That's incredible. That's incredible. Anyway.
That's some content for the Super Bowl. We got to ask some Americans what they think dose means. All right.
Tom is shocked. Let's move on. Defense showed a bit of vulnerability against the Commanders. Tougher time than usual preventing the Raiders from moving the ball. Bo Nix sacked 3 times in that game. But in terms of what they were able to do, offensively, they're finding ways to grind out results. The thing that wasn't working for the Broncos um, earlier in the season was that the offense was quite rusty and quite ineffective, and they were churning out 1 to 2 to 3 point wins, and frankly, people just weren't taking them seriously. But look at Marvin Mims. Look what he can do with punt returns. It's just so fun to watch, and this offense feels like it's starting to develop a real efficiency and a real shape in what is a crucial point going in to the next few weeks. The Broncos obviously have the Chiefs as well coming up in the final few weeks, and you look at that big win last week against the Raiders, a team that the Patriots lost against, and you ask yourself just how far can they go. I think the biggest thing for me is the passing game. In terms of getting the ball downfield, they have confidence. But for me, what Bo Nix is doing very, very well, what he's doing very, very well at the moment, is he's found a way to neutralize pressure, and he's able to move that ball more effectively. I'm really enjoying watching them. I really find the fact that this team has found its identity. They've got some great receivers and some great young guys coming through in terms of the tight end core as well. They have an opportunity this week in Mile High to go in against the Packers and really put a marker down, not just in the AFC, but on the NFL overall. And I think that is something to be celebrated. I think it's going to be great to see. Obviously, I'm completely biased. While I am dosed, and I am a dose, I am completely biased. I want the Broncos to go win the Super Bowl here, lads. But certainly coming through in shadows and shades of 2015, 2016, I think of different guys like, if you look at DT, look at what they have now. Look at a couple of the guys on how I even look at Owen Daniels back in the day, and certain things are starting to add up to me now. They just look very, very similar to this 2015 team. Defense, not at the level of it, but they're certainly up there. I think the Broncos beat the Packers on Sunday by 7 to 10 points at home in Mile High. And good luck to Dan Whelan punting in the altitude.
Yeah, I want to see the Broncos offense against the aforementioned defense that was talking about for the Packers, just because there hasn't been a whole lot of high quality defenses on the Broncos schedule. That said, they have played the Texans, which is probably the number 1 defense in the NFL right now. But the thing is, and this will probably become a theme as we go forward, it's like within the AFC, there isn't a whole lot of really stout defenses to play against. So you kind of have to peek into the NFC, I think, at times. So that's why I'm kind of interested to see how they do this weekend against a unit that's complementary on both sides of the ball in the Green Bay Packers. I think I'm still picking the Packers. I do have the line here, 1.5 points just on SBK before we started the podcast.
We're going to go with Headache to finish off. I mean, just before we do that, Jason, I'm taking the Broncos. You think the Broncos are going to win this game?
Yeah, I think I'll go with Denver in this one. I love how Packers are playing on offense, but Denver defense, I just always struggle to pick against that Denver defense. I really like what they do there.
Try Franklin, 3 touchdowns on Sunday.
While you're pulling up Headache there, Michael, we did get some questions in, and Jason, I'll throw to you real fast. Is Jason from Cork? Harry, you were saying earlier on you'd be offended, I suppose. Would you be by a question like that?
I'll be buying some spiced beef for Christmas dinner this week, so I'm a Cork man. If you couldn't tell, Bears is my local team.
I have some.
The other question, real quick, Michael, was would Flacco not have been a safer bet? This is talking about the Colts. Played there last year, but sure, Flacco was signed to the Bengals. The Bengals have been praised by Mike Tomlin for getting him.
And the trade deadline's over as well.
Well, yeah, they'd have to release him, but why would you release a guy that?
Did he request his release? There was a report that he requested his release early.
But why would they do that? Like, they've given him a 5th-round pick. Like,
it's.
They don't want to look really stupid.
They would look
and
so
well
stupid.
done.
They look so
well
stupid.
done for going 2 parts in this podcast, an hour and 9 minutes, and nobody talked about Shedeur Sanders. Well done. Headache time. Time stamping this podcast very quickly from me. Mike Evans gets me through the first round of the NFL Fantasy Playoff. He comes back and scores 3 touchdowns on Thursday Night Football. Hell of a statement. And he will get the 1,000 yards. in the next
We
4
have
weeks.
we have done cartwheels to make sure we don't timestamp podcasts so much so like look back to our.
I don't care anymore. It's
I
week 15. It's
cannot
fine.
believe
It's
you.
fine.
My headache, and I suppose it's a headache because we're giving you a headache. We keep on going on about it. Was to look at Daniel Whelan for the Pro Bowl, get your votes in. I took it for granted, but I didn't actually cast my vote until this week, so that's why I was like, I must actually do it. I saw the results are coming in though. Daniel Whelan has jumped from 6th of his position to 4th. Obviously, you want to see him rise a bit higher there. He is obviously
Dan's ma said he's 3rd at the
He's on
minute.
3rd? Okay.
3rd, and he's 1st in something called PPE, where friends, family, and all can vote. So he leads the league in that. I don't know what any of that means, but I want to thank Amory for her help and for getting the word out. And we just want Dan to get it. lovely guy. Got a chance to meet him a few weeks ago. Really
could he
nice
get
guy.
the trifecta? Could he get the trifecta, the Pro Bowl, the Super Bowl, and the All Pro in 1 year?
We'll see. It would be great to have Dan at the Super Bowl. It'd be brilliant. Nice guy. So looking forward to that. I do have some breaking news, which people on the podcast are going to exclusively hear before.
Hold on. Dan Whelan would hate to see us coming at the Super Bowl. It's like when he's like being left alone by everyone else.
He's gobshites. He's gobshites. What
every opportunity we'll be asking him questions.
Jason, what Cardinals player have you got in your headache list this week, Danner?
I genuinely have a Cardinals player, by the way, man.
But
I have to work it in there somehow, like this North Korean restrictions on what I can say or what I can't say for these topics. I'm getting it in there, right? Now, this one has a caveat. If Marvin Harrison plays this week, forget about this headache. But if he doesn't play, Michael Wilson,
because he's got to be announced on Friday that he's playing.
he hasn't practiced today at this point, so we'll see if he's back. But genuine, like, this guy deserves a mention. There's been 3 games when Marvin Harrison hasn't played. Michael Wilson has, in those games, 15 catches for 185 yards, 10 catches for 118 yards, 11 catches for 142 yards. When he's used more, he really has been playing some great football lately. They have the Texans.
Michael Wilson.
Do you not think that Mark Hogan has him? And last week I put him in when Marvin Harrison came back, even though I had Marvin Harrison Jr. on my bench, and he got me 6.6, and that's the game that I lost to you, Jason, by less than a point. So, of course,
you can still propose trades in this league. Who the hell set this league?
No, you can't. You can't.
It's letting me propose it.
No, it's off week 15. Try and put it through. It won't come through. This is the way to end the podcast. Is with our.
Jesus, Mark, that's a piss poor team. Mark, don't worry about the crack. That's.
Hold on, I beat you in terms of points scored and everything.
go and tell Andy Reid that. I beat you in terms of.
You put up 108 points.
I won when it matters. And I am going to take this championship and take my €50 ahead.
Oh my God. Michael, teams scored 98 points a week on you. They put 128 points up on me. There's simple maths here.
Who cares? I won fair and square. And we won't talk about the collusion that you almost got yourself involved in last week. Have you made your headache pick? Can we go? Are we done?
Yeah, I said that the Dan Whelan, it's worth shouting out one more time, the headache that we're giving to people just going on and on and on about it. But it makes so much sense, obviously, but it gives such pride to people over here if he was able to make the Pro Bowl. And
there is one name, Mick. You mentioned Shador Sanders, that we went to full podcast without saying his name. I don't think we've said the name Charlie Smith on this podcast.
There we go.
There we go. Got to get that in. Another solid week.
Oh, why did we not say his name the whole time? That's so bad. Hello to everybody in Mayo Bridge listening. Leo Smith, Martin as well. We really appreciate it. I'm not going to Mayo Bridge this weekend. We wish Charlie the very best. Big week for him. Elevation ends this week. He needs to be signed to the active roster. Maybe they'll give Cade York a chance the last few weeks. Hopefully not. Charlie deserves his opportunity. I am going to hopefully try my best and get Charlie at that Neil Reynolds event in the Moy. I'm going to announce now that James Scahill is joining us in Galway on the Friday night. James Scahill, a lifelong New England Patriots fan. Who knows what we'll be talking about that championship Sunday. Something tells me it could be about the New England Patriots. That's Galway's 60% gone. It is going to go linktr.ee/PF Ireland. That same link gets you to the Dan Whelan Pro Bowl vote. And also this weekend, we've got a big double. The over in the Bills Patriots and the over in the Rams against the Lions is 5-2 of our partners, SBK. 18+. Please be gamble aware. From myself, from Hogan, from Hez. We will see you next week when we've got a full slate Jess Picks podcast on Friday. College football playoff starts next week, and the NFL rolls into week 16. Enjoy the weekend. We'll chat to you soon. God bless. Ewa.